like to start with a quick pep to Hacker Public Radio. There's no host or anything. It's a completely community-driven podcast thing. So pretty much you record an episode, you send it in, and we put it up, which kind of makes it hard to get regularity, even though we're pretty much hitting every day. And it's a really good way to get all kinds of crazy stuff. He's going to start the talk. I'm going to pass it off around. This is
Hello? Hello? Everybody sound okay? Right? Okay. Louder? Wow. Awesome. Magic. Okay. Hello, Arduino. This talk is about Arduinos. Arduinos come in two sides of the Arduino. There's the hardware and the software. The Arduino is basically a microcontroller. So you're plugging in something like an LED, some temperature sensors, some kind of small electronic gadgets, and then you're writing code to control it instead of running a bunch of wire and other ICs. So let's get started. I'm going to cover the hardware for getting started in the Arduino world. This is going to be my attempt at the Electronics 101 for the Arduino environment. And what we see here, this is an actual physical schematic for the Arduino board itself. So all those lines are the same thing as this. So this is like the source code for our program. It's like the blueprints to a house. With this schematic and the part list, we can make Arduinos all day long. That's the cool thing about the Arduino environment. It's all open source. So once you get the knowledge either on the hardware or the software, it's all you. Digital electronics are awesome. They're awesome for many reasons. They're based on 5-volt logic. This is how they're doing the communication when they're pulsing the signals back and forth. They're doing it based on 5 volts. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Because they're based on 5 volts, they're not deadly. You can't kill yourself with the Arduino. If you're playing around making a project, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to blow a chip. It's maybe going to smoke, bad plastic smell. Maybe a little tingly, but you're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to poo your pants. Not going to ruin your day. There are a lot of components in this 5-volt range of family. So their components are cheap for the most part, can be easily available, and depending on what you're buying, you can get a lot of stuff cheap. There's a really good existing hobbyist community out there for the Arduino, but for electronics in general. There's actually magazines. There's all kinds of media for getting started in electronics. So we talked about sending signals, this 5-volt signals. You can send this one of two ways. It's going to be digital or it's going to be analog. When you send a signal digitally, which is the preferred and easier way, it's got one of two states. And we call this discrete. So the signal is either true or false, high or low, on or off, 1 or 0. This is kind of gets back to the whole binary. We're sending ones and zeros. And the way we're sending these ones and zeros is with pulses of electricity. The same way with analog. Analog can be any value. So to make a good example, think of a light switch. When we have just a regular switch, you walk into the room and you flip it, it's on. There's no middle ground. It's either on or it's off. You've either got light or you don't have light. The analog representation of that example would be like a dimmer switch. So you click it on and you can turn it 25% on. You can turn it all the way on. You can dim it back down. So analog has multiple ranges of values. So this is 5-volt logic. What we see here is a little bar graph representation of how we send those signals and how they're processed. So we see here in the red is, we've got it highlighted, it's anything above 2 volts up to 5 volts. When you send a signal, will represent a high in our microcontroller environment. Anything below 0.8 of a volt to 0 volts will represent a low. We've got a yellow area here, which is the undefined region. And this is used for basically signal switching, and you want to kind of avoid being in the undefined zone. When your signal is above 0.8 of a volt but below 2 volts, it's neither high nor low, so it's undefined. It's this weird nether region of electronics. It's very dangerous. Stay away from it. But yeah, so when we're sending our ones and zeros, our highs and lows, our trues and false, that's how we're sending our signals. We're either pulsing something above 2 volts or something below 0.8 of a volts. And this is how we're doing our communication. And the reason you might ask, well, how come it's not 0 volts and then just 5 volts? Why do we have this big range? Well, you've got to be able to switch the voltage. So it's going to take a small amount of time. We're talking nanoseconds. But it all adds up. So the amount of cycles that you can go, how many signals you can send a second, the shorter our undefined region is, the faster it can switch from high to low, 0 to 1, and back and forth. So it's a nice little trade-off there. Example time. Good time. We see here's the close-up of the Arduino board, and then we've got a little LED and a resistor. This is the Hello World for the Arduino. This is their version of Hello World. And basically what this does is it makes an LED blink. It comes on for a second, goes off for a second, goes on for a second, goes off. So I'm going to talk about the actual physical side of how to do this. And Droops will talk about how to do it with the code. So we've got a real simple circuit here. We've got 2 pieces of wire, the LED, the resistor. We've got the green wire, which is coming from pin 13 on the Arduino. It's going over to the resistor, and the resistor is connected to the LED. And then from the LED, that black wire is going back to ground. It's completing our circuit. This is a visual representation of it. And here's some of the tools that we need to get started. If you want to work with the Arduino, if you wanted to go home right now today and start playing with some of this, this is the basic stuff that you'll need. When I sit down and I'm doing Arduino stuff, working on a project, this is usually all the stuff I have working with me on a beginning project. I've got some wire cutters, some wire strippers. I got needle nose pliers. These are great for bending pieces of the wire, shaping, sticking components into the breadboard. And the breadboard. That's about all I really use when I've got an idea in my head and want to get something out in a physical world. So, we'll take our circuit. Like I said, this is a visual representation and the pictorial version. So, what we see here, this is an electronic schematic. This schematic is the same thing as this. It's just an easy way to design it so you can have an idea for a circuit, write it down, and share it with your friends. So what we see here is, I'm going to stand up a little bit, this right here is the schematic symbol for a battery. Okay, we've got our positive and our negative. This is the schematic symbol for a resistor. This is the schematic symbol for an LED. And what's happening in our circuit is little caveat. There's a... Everybody see the dot? Little bit of a caveat. This right here isn't really true to what we've got going on here. I should actually have from positive, this should be pin 13, and this should be the ground pin. But from being in school and doing these kind of examples over and over so many times, I've just gotten in the habit of drawing it like this. So I apologize. But it's common to see this as this is your battery source, your resistor, LED. And the problem right now that we've got going with this immediate circuit is that we're going to be sending 5 volts from the Arduino to represent a high signal. But our LED only needs 2 volts. So the problem is if we send in anything more than 2 volts, it's going to overload, which means it's going to get really bright for just a little second. And then it's never, ever, ever coming on again. It's going to be burnt out. So we want to stop that because we want our light to blink on and off, not just on and never again. So we have a problem. We need a solution, and thus we call math. Help math, we need a formula. So math will give us a formula. This formula is the TRIFORCE of electronics, aka Ohm's law. But I always thought it was the TRIFORCE of electronics. It sounds cooler. No offense to Mr. Ohm. Okay, at the top we have voltage, we have our current, and we have resistance. And basically what's going on here is if you know any 2 of these values, you can figure out the third value. So voltage divided by current will give you resistance. Voltage divided by resistance gives you current. Current times resistance gives you voltage. So, in our example circuit, we knew that we had 3 volts too much. We know that we had 20 milliamps, or this is 0.02 amps. It's kind of like your kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, but in reverse. So we've got milli, micro, nano going the other way. So in electronics, you'll see a lot of going both ways. So being computer guys, I think I can skip the decimal point, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. This has been really goofy on your math. But this cool thing about the Arduino, this is about as complicated the math that you need to do. And really it's just kind of following along other people's projects. So not a lot of math. But we can see any 2 of these numbers give us the third easy time. So now we know the correct values to complete our happy circuit. So we know if we put a 150 ohm resistor in there, that's going to block 3 volts of that current and allow only 2 volts to flow through. And we'll have a happy blink, blink off, blink on, blink off in our circuit. So, circuit complete. Thank you, Matt. Components. Components are the things that we use to make our circuits. This is what our project's doing. It's like Legos. These are the different colored blocks that we're putting together, attaching with wire, and making the magic happen. They come in 2 basic flavors. You've got through-hole components and surface mount components. What we saw in our little example with the LED and resistor, those are through-hole components. Right? And there's a big difference in those 2 categories is with the through-hole, the very larger parts, they work very nicely in a breadboard, and they're very convenient to solder, very convenient to identify compared to surface mount. Surface mount, when you're looking at your part list, like when you're out on the interweb or out on Radio Shack or wherever you go to get your parts, if you're looking at, you just got a part number or some kind of brief description, usually if it's surface mount, they'll have a little SMD for surface mounted, and that'll let you know, hey, this is too small, and I really don't want to be messing with it, unless I know what I'm doing. Usually if I see surface mount, I just skip over it, because it's a lot of trouble. They're small in size, they don't work with the breadboard, not really good for prototyping, and they can be difficult, or in many cases, impossible, depending on the component, to solder by hand. A lot of surface mount, it's really designed for mass production and making really small, tight electronics. This is a resistor. We've got up at the top, we've got a little schematic symbol. The little squiggly line is the US version. The little square box rectangle is the European version. So it's kind of like US and metric. So some schematics have different symbols. Some are the same. Depends on what side of the pond you're on. But you'll see them enough to, it's kind of second nature. It's not a big issue. These are through-hole component resistors. These are the surface mounts. You can see on the surface mounts here, they've got some numbers. The numbers, it's a little code, but it lets us know the value of the resistance. So when we're searching for a 150 ohm resistor, we can look at the number, but we're not going to use surface mount. So we've got on our resistors here, we've got color bands. This color band represents a code of numbers. So we can look at the colors and determine which one of these is going to be our 150 ohm resistor, or whichever one we need for our circuit. This is the little color code and the little number code. I'm not going to spend a lot of time out on it. It's there on the internet. When you come to look for your stuff, there's plenty of places to look at it. It's pretty simple to grasp, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over it. Another resistor. This is a potentiometer. Got the schematic symbols again. This is a variable resistor. What this is your volume control knob. This is the dimmer switch. This is anything that adjusts something from high to low or dark to bright, something like that. What we've got going on here is with, you can see on this potentiometer, sometimes they're called pots, but on this pot, we've got 3 leads coming off the bottom. With this potentiometer, we've got 3 leads. So the way this works is, we'll say, for example, this potentiometer, its value is 10 kiloohms, which is a normal value for a potentiometer. So this pot, it's got 3 leads, and the way this works, you're only going to hook up 2 of these leads. So if we hook out the 2 outside leads, it's going to work just as a 10 kiloohm resistor. It's not going to change value. It's going to be a set fixed 10 kiloohm resistor. But if we use an outside and the middle, then we're using the value of whatever the knob is. And the way this is working is it's got kind of like a little wiper on the inside. And so as you change the knob, you're changing the actual physical length of that wire inside, and that's how the resistance value is changing. So you can set it to no resistance at all, where it's equivalent to just another piece of wire, to turn all the way up to 10 kiloohms and its maximum resistance value, or anywhere in between. So it's used for your dimmer switch, volume. They're very useful. And a nice little trick too that I would throw out there is that you've got 3 leads. So if you're using your potentiometer kind of like as a volume control or something, say to dim a light, okay? You're just using 2 of these leads. What about this 3rd lead? Well, let's say we have 2 lights, and we have our potentiometer set in the middle. It's at a 50-50 value. Say if it's 10 kiloohm, we got it set to 5 kiloohms. And if we have this wire hooked up to the LED, and then the other wire hooked up to an LED, it'll work kind of like a balance. So when we turn the knob one way, one side will go 40%, the other side will go up 60%. So if you want to do kind of a comparator value, this is a quick analog way to do a comparator. This is a thermistor. It's basically doing the same thing with the knob, instead it's doing it with temperature. So you can put it in somewhere where if it gets too hot, you want to let the current flow. Once it gets a certain temperature, the light goes off, the alarm goes off, saves the world. This is a photoresistor. Same thing going on, except we're changing the value resistance with light. So this is like your night light that you have in the bathroom. When it's all dark, it keeps you safe, keeps the monsters at bay. These are like real simple kind of solar panels. They're just detecting the amount of light that's coming in. They're not really generating a lot of power. This is an LED. We all love LEDs. They blink. These are your through-hole components. These are your surface mounts, and they're really, really, really small. But LEDs have a polarity, which means they only work one way, because LEDs are light-emitting diodes. And the diode is basically, it's like a one-way valve. Stuff can only flow through this one way, instead of like a normal wire where you can hook it up either way and it doesn't really matter. So they have a polarity, which you'll notice that they've distinguished that one lead is shorter, one lead is longer than the other. This tells us which side is positive, which side is negative. So the long lead is our positive or anode, and our short lead is our cathode. It's the negative. So when we're hooking this up into the circuit, our 5 volts, our high signal, needs to be coming into the long lead. And then the negative or ground coming out of the short lead is the cathode going back through the circuit. LEDs, visual identification. So say, what happens in such a scenario where we can't see our leads? Well, we don't know which one's longer. Oh no, what are we going to do? You know, danger. Well, there's a couple other tricks to visual identifying your LED. It's kind of hard to tell here in this picture, but your LEDs are normally round. And right here on this side, there's a little flat notch. That side with the flat notch, the same side that the flat notch is on, that pin is going to be your ground pin. So that's going to be the short. If you look inside here, you can see what looks like a little flag going on here. And I use a little mnemonic in my head, because this also is the same pin that's ground. Used to help me remember before I could keep analog and anode and cathode and all that straight. Here's a bar graph LED. Basically, this is 10 LEDs put together in a nice little package that we've got 10 leads on each side for a total of 20. So we're just really kind of saving size space. We're still going to have a whole lot of wires going on there. This is an RGB LED. If you can see here in this picture, I'm not sure if you can. This RGB, which stands for red, green, blue LED, can generate any color that we can see with the human eye. And the way it works like a TV screen or a projector or whatnot. It uses a mixture of red, green, and blue to produce any color that you got going on. But you'll notice here that it's only got 4 leads. So the way this LED works is that it's got what's called a common lead. So it's either got a common anode or a common cathode. And what this means is, let's say, for example, that this has a common just has a common cathode lead pin. Well, then what we need to do is we need to hook up the common to, in our case, since it's cathode, we're going to hook it up to the ground. And then the 3 other pins are going to be what? These are going to be what we hook up to the voltage. Sorry. So what we want to do if we want to make colors, say if we want to make just the color red, we're going to have to figure out which one of those pins is red. And then we're going to send voltage to that pin, and it's going to make just red. And now if we wanted to make the color white, we send voltage to all 3 pins. And so we've got voltage going to 3 pins, and we've got our common pin always connected to ground, and that's what completes that circuit. And so sending any mixture of voltage to either one of the 3 colors is going to give us greens and purples and blues and pinks and wonderful colors. So these are really nice, but they're kind of expensive. So they're usually $1 or more a piece, where like a normal LED is 10 cents. So, but depends on what you're doing with them. 7-segment displays are really cool. Everybody's really familiar with these. These are what they use in our alarm clocks. You see them all over the place. These 2 also have a common lead. So each one of these 7 little lights that we got here, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that we use to make our numbers, each one of those will have a pin that will send voltage to. We'll say in the same example that this is common cathode. We'll have one of that common cathode to the ground, and then we'll send voltage to the other pins to light up whatever particular number we want. So if we wanted to make a number 1, we'd send voltage to B and C, and that would make a number 1. If we wanted to make a number 2, it'd be A, B, C, E, D. So this is a BCD binary coded decimal system. And basically what we got going on, this is a way to drive that 7-segment display. So instead of having a whole bunch of wires and stuff hooked up, we can use binary to send the signal. Okay, and BCD is a little bit different than normal binary. And what we got going on here is that it only goes 0 to 9. Okay, so we've got our normal 1s, 2s, 4s, and 8 column, which is represented by A, B, C, and D. Okay. So what happens, show of hands, everybody familiar with binary? Everybody? Okay, everybody understands the principle. All right, good. Well, what happens is when we go after 9, when we get to 10, instead of doing the normal binary for 10, we're actually going to do a 1 and a 0 to make 10. So our numbers, it's easier to visually decode for like a person. So instead of having to count out all your columns, you just have to remember 1s, 2s, 4s, and 8s. Math is a lot easier with it. But this little chip we've got going here is we're going to hook up 4 wires on the input side. We've got our 0, 1, 2, and 3 that represent our A, B, C, and D. So what we'll do is if we want to, and they're connected to, we've got the outputs here for our 7-segment display, our A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so if we want to send just the number 1, well, the number 1 in binary is 1, which is the A column. So we send 5 volts to just the A column and nothing else. This little chip does all the magic and then outputs the light to pins B and C, which makes our number 1. So we're only using 1 wire instead of 2 wires to drive that signal. These little tricks, little components, this is the magic. It's what makes your project flow together, saves a lot of kind of time and hassle learning about ICs and what we're doing. This is a schematic for a 7-segment binary driver, BCD driver. What we've got going on here is we've got 4 buttons. Okay, that's what we're going to be used to push to send the signal to whatever number we want on our display. These could be pins from an Arduino. They could be any kind of input. So they could be a motion sensor, they could be anything. But in our case, why not an Arduino? Why not have 4 pins? We explain what's going on here in this schematic. You see right now we got LSB and MSB. What's that mean? What stands for least significant bit and most significant bit. So this way you know where your A starts and where your D starts. Least significant bit, 1. Most significant bit, 8. We know we know which way our number system is going. Let's see, we've got our battery symbol that we've seen before. So it tells us that the voltage is going up and around to the chip, and then it's coming back down through the ground and completing the circuit. But along the way, it's tied in here to these buttons. So if we, in this case, if we push a button, it's going to allow that voltage to flow through and go to the chip. In the case of an Arduino, it'd just be us writing a high in the code, and it's going to pulse it out. So what's going on is if we, any number we want to make, it's going to pulse it through. We've got some resistors going on down here. These are what we call pull-up resistors. And when I talked about earlier, the undefined zone, it's possible in your projects that all the stuff you got going on, you might get a little noise in your system. And it could make it look like there's a signal coming through on your line. However your stuff's wired up, it could look like it's more than 0.8 of a volt when you're not really pushing the button, but it's still getting more than 0.8 of a volt. So you might get a weird flicker going on in your light here, or weird errors, just your signal looks flaky. So by using these resistors, it makes sure that no signal is getting through unless it's driven. Unless it's driven by the source. So it's going to take a substantial amount of voltage, not just phantom voltage going on there. And then these are the resistors coming out from our chip that limit the amount of current and don't blow up our 7-segment display because it's driven by LEDs. So we got to keep our LEDs blinking. So we need resistors. IC. An IC, this is what the BCD chip was that we just looked at. They come in lots of different sizes, shapes. They do all kinds of different things. Just one of my favorite things is looking through parts catalogs and is finding the different ICs and looking at what they do. And there's all kinds of different ICs that do all kinds of weird specific tasks that really only useful in this situation, to where there's some chips that are useful in all kinds of situations. So it's a really nice, good thing to note that we're missing the through-hole components. We're working with through-hole components, and in the ICs these are referred to as DIP, which stands for dual inline packages, because they've got pros on each side. Okay, time for a data sheet. Everybody see that okay? Alright, what we're looking at, this is the data sheet. So what I'm trying to do here is teach y'all how to be able to look at a schematic, look at a data sheet. A data sheet it tells you all the information about your part or your component. So if you get this random component, well, what does it do? How do I use it? You look at the data sheet, and then by looking at the data sheet and knowing what that component does, you understand when you're looking at your circuits, your schematics, hey, okay, now that's doing this and this, and helps it all come together a little bit more so you can guys get out there, get on the internet, look at some of the stuff and actually start reading it instead of it all looking like some weird hieroglyphics or something. So what we see right here is this is actual, it's given the dimensions for the LED. So these, if you say wanted to actually mass produce your wonderful blinking LED or whatever, you can actually draw a CAD schematic, know the dimensions to make the case and the package and all that before you ever actually made a prototype, if you want to do it all in a virtual environment, because you've got all the proper dimensions. Also notice that up here at the top, this schematic, this data sheet, is a data sheet for more than one part. It's using the same package type, but it's coming in different colors. So we've got the standard red, high efficiency red, green, yellow. So we'll need to kind of keep in mind the different little serial numbers when we're looking at a part. This right here, I guess most people, if there's anything at all you want to look at a data sheet, the most important part that you want to look at is kind of your forward voltage. This right here it's telling you what you need to know. Like in our example circuit for our Hello World, we had our LED was running at 2 volts at 20 milliamps. How did I know that? How do you figure that out? Where's the magic? This is the magic. You go to the data sheet, let you know what all this stuff is. So we see we've got the serial numbers for our different versions, our different colors of the LED, and it's telling us the different values, the different voltages. We've got a typical and a max. The max is obviously the maximum. You don't want to set your normal operating to the maximum voltage. You want to set it to the typical. So that way, it's what you normally want it to be. So in this case, if we were going to use, say, this LED here, it's 1.6. So going back to our Hello World circuit that we did earlier, now we've got 3.4 volts too much instead of 3 volts too much. So we'd have to redo our Ohm's law and figure out what the minimum resistance value that we need to do. So basically, that's the cool thing about data sheets. There's a whole lot extra stuff that is useful but not necessary, and as you go through it will get more interesting to you. And real fast, this is another data sheet for that BCD that we were just looking at. Now, data sheets are particularly awesome for integrated circuits, the little black ICs, because they're telling you everything that's going on in here. See, we can see the actual physical pinout, so we know what each pin is. These are our data inputs. We've got A, B, C, and D, and then we've got our outputs, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we know where they're at, so we know where to physically put our wires coming in. So when our buttons that we had in that earlier schematic, we want the ones column, that's got to come here to number 7, or pin 7. And if we're sending a number 9, then we need a signal coming to pin 7 and pin 6. Magic. Okay. So, but there's a lot of other stuff that can be confusing on the data sheet, like, what's all this? It's confusing and scaring me. Don't worry about it. Focus on the stuff that you need to know. So this is giving you the basics. Also, up here at the top, it's going to tell us what each one of these pins do. So we've got an LT, a BI, and an EL. What's all that mean? Read the data sheet, RTFM. But there's not a lot to read, but it'll tell us what we need to know. This right here, this is basically the insides of the IC, like the guts. This is what's going on inside. It doesn't matter to us because it just works. Okay, if you want to know, it's back there, but it doesn't matter. This is a really cool function table for our BCD. So even if you're not super smart guy and you don't know how to work the BCD and figure out, look at the chart. It'll tell you, depending on what state, what it's going to output. So if nothing else, you can follow along, play a matching game. It'll tell you what. So we've got our EL, VI, LT, we've got our inputs, we've got our outputs. So it'll tell us, hey, if you put a high, which is 5 volts, to these pins, it's going to output nothing. It's going to put out number 9. It's going to put out whatever number. So by getting a data sheet, reading through a little bit, there's going to be some stuff that's way too much information. But there's going to be the basic stuff that is the crucial stuff that will help you out. Really what you need to know. So I hope that made a little bit of sense, and I'm going to let Droops talk to you about how to write the software. So once you got all your code going, you do awesome stuff with it. Does anybody have any questions while he's switching over? Anything real fast? Yeah, you just take out the battery. Okay.
Magical potions. Okay, that was the first slide. Yeah. Okay, we're not going to teach you everything. We're just going to get you interested. I'm going to go really quick because I have like 130 slides. Some of this code's been taken from others. It's really basic stuff. No one's copyrighting stuff they learned their first year. We didn't give credit to a lot of people because it's really simple. And if it's something cool, I'll tell you about it. But, sorry. And we're going to have a table on the 9th floor with all kinds of stuff to play with. And we have a bunch of giveaways with my cool giveaway graphic. And if you know how to solder, find a bunch of people that don't, and we'll give you something and you can show them. And if you don't know how to solder, come to the table, or if you want to build stuff or play with Arduinos or touch RFID tags or just ask us questions. We got it. Okay, this is the Arduino. You've all had one in your hand, hopefully. And this is all open source. Like, you can get the schematics, you can, whatever you want. The software is all open source. It's happiness. It has a microcontroller, which is different from a microprocessor. And that a microprocessor is a little processor, and a microcontroller is a processor and RAM, storage, and all the good stuff. It's a computer. And this is a development board for that particular chip. What a development board means is that you can actually plug things into it and make it do stuff. If you were going to go into production, you wouldn't want to use these. In fact, they kind of frown on it because they don't want their name used in production stuff. But these guys don't care at all. This is a clone of the Arduino. It's called phreaknic12. There's no governing board or group of people. It's just anybody that wants to make one can, because it's all open source. And they don't care what you do with it. And if you want to call something you make a phreaknic12 and it has none of these components, sure, you're just going to confuse people. They don't care. These are usually cheaper. A real Arduino is usually like $35, $33. These go from like $12 to 20-something. They're all different shapes and sizes. Some are pin compatible, like this one. So everything's in the exact same place. And these are not approved by the Arduino team, so I haven't found one that I disliked. And we have some of those to give away with the fancy little graphic. And there's all kinds more. There's the Decimilia, which is the one that was current until like 3 days ago. There's little bitty ones that use a little bit of voltage. There's great big ones. There's the lily pad, like the clothing one, which is really kind of cool. There's a Sanguino, which I'm going to get to in a second. Most of these things have an ATmega 168, which is the chip that they have. There's several different sizes of this chip, as in the way they look. Some are surface mount, and you'll never get them soldered on. And some are the ones that can be passed around. The lily pad has the surface mount. It's the little square. And the regular ones just have the dip package that fits in a little socket. You can also pull that one out and put a different chip in to increase your power. But I haven't found anybody that sells one yet. It's got 14 digital in and out pins, and it's got 6 analog pins. And PWM is pulse width modulation, which is like you're flipping the light switch so fast the lights are kind of dim, except it's faster than. Okay, and it's a tiny computer that runs off a 9-volt battery or a lithium-ion battery, and it's really cool, and you can put them all kinds of places and on people. The language for it is really, really simple. It's based on wiring, which is a whole other open source language. And the IDE is based on the processing IDE, which processing is its whole language and has an IDE. It's all open source and happy. And it's like really simple C. And it's very easy to pick up. It works on Linux, Mac, and Windows. There's not a BOS version, but I guess no one needs that. It's so simple. This is a basic program. Where's that? So we're going to declare a variable, and we're going to say a sensor pin is 5. And then we have 2 functions that are in every little sketch. They're not programs, they're sketches. There's a setup and a loop. So in the setup, we're going to say that that pin is an input. So we're looking for input on pin 5. And in this loop, we are going to read that pin and say val is now the value of that. So 5 is coming through, or a 140 or whatever is coming through. That variable now has that, and that's pretty simple stuff. Too many things in my hands. Okay, this is the basic hardware layout of one of these things. This is an old drawing from an older board, but it's all pretty much the same. Would you like to go over this board? He's the hardware guy.
Okay, basically what we've got going on, we've got 14 digital out pins. In digital, stuff always starts with 0. So yes, it says 13, but there's 14 of them there. Your first 2 are your serial communication. So you can actually communicate through things over serial, like through USB, talk to other devices, talk to the computer. It's really nice. So you can have an external, like if you're putting to an LCD or whatever, you're going to use these 2 pins that you're receive and transmit. This is the actual IC. This is the ATmega 168, or on this board I think it was ATmel 8. Anyway, that's the IC. That's what's doing all the microcontroller magic. It's just driving the outputs to do everything. You've got analog here, digital there. You've got power, so if you want to take power in, power out, this is your regular power source. This is your USB power source. This would be your regulator to keep more than 5 volts, because if you're using like a 9-volt battery, that's too much. So we need to keep it at 5. We use a regulator. This little chip here is what sends your serial communication over the USB. If you want to talk to the computer, if you want to dump your code, this is a little magic chip. It's the FTDL, DLTI, FIDI, something. Yeah. This is a crystal oscillator. This is your clock speed. It's pulsing at 16,000 times a second. So it's what's keeping the beat to the magical rhythm. This is a reset button. And let's see, these 3 pins right here are for communicating. They're called I2C pins. The I2C pins basically allow you to talk to other smarter devices. So other types of displays. It's a quick and dirty way of interfacing commands. This right here is your actual programming pins. So if you wanted to reflash the bootloader of your chip, or if you had a blank one and wanted to load the bootloader on there, this is the way you're going to do it. You're going to hook your bootloader up to those pins and then run the magic code.
Oh, sir. Okay, this is the fancy one. I cannot pronounce that second word. It's Arduino 2009 if you don't speak Italian. And it's the latest, greatest version of the board. One of the founders just wrote a book, and they came out with this board at the same time, and you can go buy it. And it's like $30. And the magic between it and the previous version is this one will auto-sense if you have a 9-volt battery plugged up to it, or if you're trying to power it via USB. This is the one that was right before it that we learned to play with. It's the Decimilia, and it's, you know, the gold standard. It's the fancy one, and they're like $30. This is the bare bones board, which is a Freakduino. It's made by a guy from Modern Device, and he gave us some free stuff to give away. And it does not have a FIDI chip on it. Those pins at the top, you have to have a FIDI cable, which means you're not buying that chip every time you buy a board. So this thing's like $15 or $16, $17, I don't know. And the chip's on that cable, which is saving you money if you're building a lot of stuff. This is the really bare bones board. It's the size of a pack of gum. It's like $12, and we have some of those to give away. It doesn't have a crystal. It has a ceramic oscillator. Is that the word? Sure. To keep time. So it's not exactly as precise, maybe, but it works really good for what I'm doing. Okay, this is a Mac Serial Freakduino, which is made by some other people. It has a serial connection, and it has a FIDI chip on it that's in a different package, but it's been compatible to a regular Arduino. This is one by NKC Electronics. Hey, guess what? It's the same thing pretty much again. This is the SB. Again, something similar. This is the lily pad. You can wash this thing if you take the battery out of it, supposedly. I have yet to try, because they're like $30. The little square in the middle is the ATmega 168 chip. The little stuff around it is little sensors that you can buy for it, or you can just solder stuff. And apparently there's conductive thread that if you have a sewing machine or like to sew, you can really make cool stuff. This is the Arduino Pro, which is approved because it says Arduino. The people at SparkFun made it. I don't know, I haven't found a really practical reason to spend the money for it yet. This is the Wii. It's the size of a postage stamp. That one's really cool. The limitations of that is that the expense, and it's got the same stuff on it. It's the same chip. What's that? No. I don't think you're supposed to wash anything, but they have. And maybe the woman that made them says, you have washed them, so you'll buy a new one. Because they're really cool. This is the Sanguino. It uses a completely different chip. And it has more digital ins and outs, more serial, more analog. And it's big. And it's red. Okay, when I say all these things are pin compatible, like they're the same size and everything, that doesn't matter if you're just really homebrewing stuff, but they sell these things called shields, which will fit on top of an Arduino. And if you get one that's the same size, they'll also fit on them. And you can build your little projects on these shields. So, like this one just has a bunch of little through holes you can solder stuff in. It moves all those digital analog pins up. So when I build something on this and I want to use my Arduino, I just pull that shield off and I don't have to unwire anything.
It's all good. Am I right in your way? I'm sorry. It's a daughter board. Thank you, sir. This is one that has a little breadboard stuck to it, and I've got stuff wired up. You can stack these things if you have lots of stuff to do. This is a giveaway. This is a shield that is a motor control shield by Lady Ada. And you can control... Alright, you can control all this stuff with an Arduino, just without this shield. But this allows you to bring different voltages in and control it better for like a stepper motor or a servo, things like that. Got one of those to give away. This is a GPS shield. So you can add GPS to your Arduino projects, and it also has a an SD card at the bottom of it to log data, which is kind of neat. These are the cables you need, and that's really a dark slide, but it's pretty much you need a USB printer cable with that A to B, and a mini USB or a serial or that FIDI cable up at the top. The FIDI cable's like $20, but it's got that chip in it. Or you can get cable adapters, like that little lily pad at the bottom takes a mini USB, and you have to have that little adapter to convert it to FIDI, or you can get a FIDI adapter that takes a mini USB and plugs into the really bare bones board, or that one up there. Okay, this is the IDE. It's really crazy. It has a verify and compile button, a stop button. You want to verify and compile things before you try to transfer it to the board. It'll do it automatically for you, but it's a little faster just to do it yourself. A new sketch. You can open a sketch, save a sketch. You can upload it to the board. You have to choose your USB port before you do this. So you go to Tools, Serial Port, and choose whichever one you think it is, and it'll give you an error if it's wrong. There's a serial monitor, so the Arduino can talk back to you, and you can talk to it via serial communications, which is really handy. There's a tab menu, so you can open up a whole bunch of different things. And there's an output monitor for when you verify and compile. It'll give you your errors or say you did a good job, and it also will, that's where your serial communication goes on. Okay, here comes the fun part. This is the hardware Hello World. We've seen the schematic for this. We have one of those boards to give away. This is the code for it. All this code is going to look really similar. So we're going to start a variable. We're going to set it as an output. We're going to digital write that pin 13 on high. We're going to delay for 1 second, or 1,000 microseconds, milliseconds, whatever. That's 1 second. Then we're going to set it to low, or 0, and then we're going to delay for another second and just continually loop that. Okay, on a fancy, like a full-size one, pin 13 already has an LED hooked to it. So I'm going to click it, send it to the Arduino board. Those two blinking lights are my serial communications talking to the Arduino, and now it's running my sketch. So I just made a little hello world. Yay. Okay, serial output. So let's make it talk to the computer. So pretty much the same sketch again, except we're going to begin a serial connection at 9600 baud. And then we're going to take 0 and print it, and then we're going to delay for a second, and we're going to increment it by 1, and then print it again. So that it looks like 1, or 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is your print lines when you're making sure your code works and that your things equal what you think they should. Okay, this is an example of a button. Nothing, like he said, is not 0, and this really confused me for a while. I thought if there's nothing going to a pin, it should be low. But it's not. You have to have that pin connected to ground so that it really is 0. Or else you're going to pick up some noise, and I didn't know what was going on. I was going to touch the button, and it would say it was pressed. And I'd move back away, and it would say it was not pressed, and it was really freaking me out. Okay, this isn't like clean, nice code. This is example code. So it all works, but we're going to set 3 buttons, and we're going to set them all as input. We're going to begin a serial connection. Then in our loop, we are going to read each one of those buttons, and if the buttons equal 1, or pressed, or 5 volts, or true, it's going to print A, B, and C. So here's my little board, and I'm going to push this, and it's going to say C all the way over on the side. And then I'm going to hit the next one, and it's going to say B or A. B! And then I hit the next button, it says A. And the reason it's filling up the whole screen is because that's a really fast serial connection for just hitting 3 buttons. So it's printing a bunch of A's and such. Okay, potentiometers. When it reads this 5 volts, the Arduino doesn't say, hey, I have 5 volts. It says that I have 1024. So that you can get some sort of frame of reference in between that. So it's not like 4 and 5 volts and you have like 5 steps through there. We're going to read a potentiometer pin on 2. We're going to set as input, serial begin. Let's read that thing and print the value. So as I turn my potentiometer, it's going to go up to 1024. And then I'm going to turn it the other way, and it's going to go back down to 0. Kind of neat. Okay, this is a thermometer. This is not exact code to do this. I'm pretty much the same code again. I'm reading an analog input, but I'm going to divide it by 2 and make a guess on the temperature. And I'm not going to show that because it would just show the number of the temperature of my room. Servo and a potentiometer. Servo is a motor that you can make go. And we're going to control it with the potentiometer, and there's a function now in this thing. So we've got our setup, we've got our loop, and we've got a servo pulse function that we wrote. And I didn't write that, I stole that. So as I turn this, my little servo turns. If you have serial communications going on, you can see where your potentiometer would number it's sending in so that you can control the servo later and know what you need to do to make it spin just like you want. This is a motion detector. They're like $10. Really cool. It's, again, an analog thing that we're going to read, and it's going to go anywhere between 0 and 1024. But if it's down here at the bottom over 600, it's going to print that I see you. So I'm just chilling, and whenever I move my hand, the little light lights up. And then I'm going to zoom in and not move, and zoom in. Oh, it caught me. And I'm trying to eradicate possums and squirrels and coons from my grandmother's yard. And I'm working on building some of these to talk wirelessly so I can sit inside, watch TV until the LED lights up and says, hey, there's a possum over here. And then I can go shoot at it. You know, that's actually not a bad idea. This is a danger shield. There's a guy in New York City, Zach Hogan. He built the Sanguino, and he built these. And it's just a little shield that fits on top of the Arduino with a lot of inputs and outputs for you to play around with. There's linear potentiometers that slide. They all have an LED that's independent of the linear potentiometer. There's a 7-segment display with the chip that drives it. There is a buzzer. There are 3 buttons, a knock sensor, some LEDs, a light sensor, temp sensor, and a reset button. Whoa! Okay, knock sensor is a backwards piezo buzzer that, instead of making a noise, detects the vibration. Like a piezo buzzer is a crystal sitting on top of a piece of copper, and when the crystal vibrates, it makes the noise. So when the copper vibrates, the crystal shakes. This is a really simple example to read that slider pin and light up that LED as it goes along. So as I move it, the little LED lights up. Ooh, magical. But as I said, the LEDs are independent, so this is the same code with the number changed. So now it lights that one instead. And that's using pulse width modulation to turn it on and off really fast. This one right here is going to talk to the 7-segment display. And I burnt one of my little LEDs out so I can have the numbers 7, 1, 2, and 3 as it just moves along. Alright, this is the 7-segment display hooked to the linear potentiometer, and it's going to move and light up all these things at random. So there's no like, hey, I want you to put 2. It's like, I want you to light up random stuff as it goes along. It's kind of neat. Okay, this is the Knight Rider example. And that's, the ghosting is part of the effect. It's not that it's cruddy. We're going to set up an array, because there's a bunch of lights, 10. And so we're going to make a little for loop to set them all as output, so we don't have to just write that code 10 times. And then we have a loop where it's going to go through and do all the little counting for us. So it makes the little effect. This is an LCD. It's HD 44780 based, which is the most common form of LCD. And we have some of these to give away. You can hook them up like this with a whole bunch of wires and use up all of your Arduino digital pins. Or you can buy one of these, which takes a power, a ground, and a single serial connection to it. And you only need one wire because you're not receiving anything from the LCD, you're just displaying. So it takes one real pin and then a shared grounded voltage pin. Here's an example. There's like a 5-minute demo on this guy's site. It's Modern Device of the LCDs just doing stuff. But we're going to set up our serial. We're using software serial so we can still have it communicate to the computer. We're having a different serial connection going on. We're going to set all that up, and then we're going to go through this loop where it clears the LCD, it delays for a second, it moves the cursor to line 0, it says print some stuff, which looks like that. And like, if you try to do that straight wiring without any sort of controlling thing, that is an awful lot of little dots that you have to light up, and that took one wire of actual data. So that's really easy to do. Solar panel. That solar panel is like $10. It's like this big. And it's pretty much a 9-volt battery. So here it is, sitting in my yard, running an LCD with a little bare bones Arduino there, or Freeduino down in the corner. I got a personal massager we made. It's got some little vibrating motors and some independent LEDs. So then when we apply the power to it, it has a really bare bones Freeduino hooked to it, which boots. And I have the LEDs lighting as the little motor spins so that you can kind of see it a little bit better. And, you can program this thing. It's just, I set it to be 2 seconds or something. But you can have it pulse, and you can have it do all kinds of fun things. Should probably encase it in something, because it's kind of pointy. And, if you notice, there's a wire coming off of it, so, it can talk to you. And if you're going to be into the homebrew electronics, you got to really, set the mood. This is a, we're having those boards we're giving away. This is a piezo buzzer hooked up to the Arduino. So, got a little music going on. That's supposed to be something from Red Dwarf, but it doesn't really sound right. So there's better music. This one is a wave shield, which we have one to give away. It takes a wave from an SD card and plays it. And I have a speaker from a computer hooked up to this thing. And we'll play it. I really don't know where to stand. I'm blocking this guy from seeing the whole thing. Maybe over here. Okay, this is a flickering candle. Because, if you've got music and you've got your massager, maybe you need little lights. That's using pulse width modulation to light some LEDs, kind of candle effect. Sporty. I finally said it. Okay, serial input. Send data to the Arduino. That's not really Zork. So anyway, we're going to send some data. If the serial connection is good, we're going to take it, and we're going to send 49 for pressing the 1. That's the decimal representation of the ASCII. And 50 would be 2. So as I press 1 and then hit enter, the little LED is going to come on. And as I press 2 and hit enter, it's going to go off. Wow. Okay, this is a homebrew alarm system. It's got 6 digital inputs, so when the little sensor breaks and it sends, hey, I'm not connected anymore. But you could have more. I just didn't really want to waste all my little parts and boards to make a bigger one. So it's ready to go, and the Arduino alarm is armed, and all 6 LEDs are on. And then when I spread it apart, the LED goes off. It's like, oh no, A is now not connected, and it's buzzing really loudly in my little piezo buzzer. Or you build when you try to build analog electronics is a booster for audio. So, that's the next step. Moving on. Door lock actuator. I'm building some pistol targets that work on the same principle as a manual clay pigeon tosser where you pull the string and it throws them with a spring and then you have to recock it. And to pull the string, I'm using some door lock actuators, which are $80 in the town that I live in, or $4 on the internet. Apparently the more dust on it, the more expensive they get. So we're using a relay, which is the little chip on the little perf board. And as we send a 5-volt signal to it, it'll say, okay, turn the switch on, and then it'll take 9 volts out of the 9-volt battery and make the thing shake. You're supposed to use 12 volts for car stuff, but it seems to work. And for some reason, I set the delay for 10 seconds, so I have a cut inly clip to make it shorter. So it plugs up, the Arduino boots, and then there's the cut, and it shrinks in. Woo! And if you have a bunch of these going on, you can make a really cool shooting range or open stuff. This is a Wi-Fi detector. My friend John Doc wants to build a GPS that detects Wi-Fi that you can walk around with and have it logged to an SD card in his pocket. So we bought a $20 Wi-Fi detector at Radio Shack that you press the button and the little LEDs search. And they say, oh, there's a 4 LED signal here, or a red one for no signal at all. So that's really ugly. But we're taking just really simply when it lights up one of those little LEDs, we're taking that signal back, it's lit up. And we have a relay, just like the other one, the previous example, that's pushing the button. And we just worked out the little timing issues. But we turn it on, and it starts searching immediately, and it finds 4 lights worth of Wi-Fi signal, and then it displays a 4. And that's not the SSID, that's just we wanted to fill room up in the LCD. But there's $20, and we have cool new functionality. Y'all all saw this one. And that's what was in your hand a second ago. You saw that. This is the inside of it, and I am the master of putting this stuff together. But it has... Where's my lighter? Oh. Thanks. Okay, that's a really bare bones Arduino that is talking to a RFID antenna that's talking serial. And then it's talking serial to the LCD over here. So that big jumbled mess of stuff is really actually kind of simple. And it's not even using the full power of the little $10 device inside of it. I didn't get a picture of my target because they're not at my house. But I'm building the whole little pistol target area where it randomly selects one. And like, this one will pop up for 4 seconds, and then that one will pop up, and I just run around shooting and giggling. Reading this serial data is really simple. You can do it in pretty much any language you can think of because it's serial data and it's really old. Second Life, very important way to read serial data. This is processing. It is a language devoted to artists for displaying stuff. And you can make really cool animations. And, animations are just data. So, let's do some of our awesome graphic design. This is a color selector like you have on your computer. You're like, I want more red or more green. This is it in hardware, talking to an Arduino. So I move these, and it gives me different analog values. And then it goes to my little color selector and displays the analog value and the color. Kind of neat. This is our drum kit. Someone had asked earlier about what's a knock sensor. Okay. As I beat it, it'll change the color of the LEDs. And I completely stole this idea from him. And we completely had total different thoughts and ways of doing this. So it actually worked out kind of cool. Open source is awesome. And in a second, I'm going to turn the lights out, and the Blue Man Group in the audience can get scared. Because I am one heck of a drummer on Tupperware. Here we go, here's the light show. And I'm sure you can all imagine the audio. And here's the processing sketch that's running as I'm beating on my drums. Having a good old time. Okay, here's my Etch-a-Sketch. You can get these at Walmart for $5, or you can build one for $1,000. This is my awesome controller for it. Mine's different. Up and down, left and right, and width of the line. What it's doing is it's talking to the Arduino, and it's saying X is this number, and Y is this number, and Z is this number, and it just continues that. And then processing reads it. So as John Doc fiddles with it, it does this. It's a really slow computer, and I don't have it set as an array that's displaying a line. It's just a circle, so you have to kind of go slow, which we didn't do very well there. But you can draw stuff on your computer, and it's neat. This is my oscilloscope. You get what you pay for on this kind of thing. If you want to buy one for $1,000, it's probably a lot better. If you want to buy one for $10 at a yard sale, it's probably better. As we run this sketch, and there we go. And as I have a linear potentiometer hooked up to this thing that I'm wiggling up and down. And as it wiggles up and down, it displays it very slowly on my screen. So that's kind of neat. It says the voltage and how long it's been running and things like this. This was an open source project that we found and added stuff to and made it slower. This is spritzing. I don't know if y'all paid attention to that slide where I opened up the RFID tag reader, but I am the master of electronics. And just beautiful putting the stuff together. And the spritzing thing is like a graphical way. You just drag components around. You're like, I want this wire to go in this pin. I want this to go here. And you can export it to Eagle, which I cannot wrap my head around. But that physical thing that I can see became this, which I can print or have made to make my own circuit boards. Kind of neat. Okay, here's some links. Arduino.cc and phreaknic12.org, processing, fritzing, and our little blog at dailyduino.com where we talk about this stuff. People who gave us stuff. Okay, when I asked someone if they could give us stuff, I was like, I'm going to mention y'all anyway because I like your store and I like the stuff y'all sell and you're very nice. Can you give me something? And they said yes. So they would have gotten mentioned anyway. But Modern Device sells really cheap bare bones Arduinos and the LCDs and the little driver board. They're awesome. NKC Electronics has all kind of stuff, including a Arduino. Adafruit is Lady Ada's site. It has all kinds of really cool little electronic projects. And HVW Tech sells that red one that I really like. Just blue LEDs and they're cooler. Here's some books that I recommend. There's new ones that I haven't read yet, but they're awesome. The processing book is way beyond me because I'm not a graphics guy or artistic at all. They wrote the language. They went to MIT, I think. They pretty clever fellas. And we're going to be on the 9th floor. I think there's food on the 9th floor. We're going to be doing more of this presentation. Like, we have a lot of stuff we want to show you that's really cool. And we have free stuff to give away and soldering and all kinds of crazy stuff. And what time is it? Way past time. Thank you all, and Arduinos are awesome.